Good day and welcome to Insider's View. I'm your host, Melissa Handrahan, and today we have a very interesting chat with a very celebrity type of figure in the Conservative Party. He's the Member of Parliament for the riding of Vaughan, but he's also the Associate Minister in National Defence. Welcome, Julian Fantino.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for making the time. Now, I'd really like to start just with how a police chief goes from this transition from spending your whole life serving in the police force and now entering into politics.
Well, it's nothing I planned to begin with, and probably that's a good thing, because when the opportunity came along, I relied on my experience with politicians. And I was on the board of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, and I spent a lot of time in Ottawa on and off, appearing before committees, begging, pleading, recommending new legislation, new tools, dealing with public safety, the kinds of things that we care deeply about, victims' issues, the protection of children, truth in sentencing, all those kinds of issues. So in my time as police chief in Toronto, I had the occasion to meet Prime Minister Harper.
Okay.
When he was the leader of the Reform Party. He came to visit. And he wanted to basically know what my issues, my concerns were, what the concerns of my colleagues were. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about these very issues, the law and order, the public safety issues, the victimizations issues. So when the opportunity came up, I thought, you know what? I've been on the outside so long, asking, begging, pleading, recommending things that needed to be done. I thought, probably better to be on the inside, where you can hopefully influence, recommend, and have people listen to you instead of being discounted. So that's what happened. So timing was everything. I retired from policing, and I happened to have an opportunity to get into politics.
Now, I'm just curious, as you worked with various police officers, is there a natural tendency for them to be more aligned with the Conservative Party?
Well, on law and order issues and public safety issues, certainly. In fact, a lot of the things that we've been doing are those kinds of things that have also surfaced from colleagues, former colleagues in law enforcement, public safety agencies, and so forth. So there is an alignment, if you will. And I think it's also philosophical sort of beliefs that we can do more, we should do more, that we need to be more focused on the plight of victims, that we need to ensure that the system of justice really is effective, that it does mete out appropriate sentences, and those sentences are not discounted. So, but you know, victims' issues, so we've done a lot in that area. And then, of course, with the threat of terrorism, we find ourselves in yet another very elevated demand for better tools for law enforcement and national security agencies to be better able to deal with the threat, which is very, very real.
Now, it must make you very proud that you're able to influence from the top down. It's a different role for you.
Well, it is, and I find it very gratifying, because the issue for me is being able to bring to the decision-making table, the discussions, a true experience. Because very often what we have found when policymakers, politicians, they deal with issues, it's sort of in a vacuum. You know, they haven't been there, they haven't done that, they really don't have a direct relationship with the issues they're dealing with. Granted, they try and do it, you know, honorably and ethically and all of that. But I think what I have brought to the table, and I'm not the only one, by the way, there are other police law enforcement people in our caucus.
Okay.
What we've tried to do really is we've tried to instill that sense of reality to the discussion, and very often, in a very nice way, if you will, try to influence a bit of an adjustment, or maybe a bit of a different direction, applying experience with what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Now, we're hearing that the Liberals have recruited another police chief, that's Bill Blair. What's your opinion on that? Well,
you know, people have asked me this, and I appreciate being asked, but my view is this. I have made my decision based on my experience, my values, my beliefs, if you will, and I'm very comfortable with that. In fact, I'm very satisfied, and I feel that I've been able to meet my expectations. For him, he's going to have to find his own way.
Yes.
You know, we will have some very significant disagreements on issues, not with him directly, but with the Liberal Party. I can tell you, for instance, we are not in favor of legalizing marijuana. Well, the Liberal Party is. So, you know, we're going to have that philosophical, and I think that'll probably be a deal breaker in the context of relationships when it comes to policy and those kinds of issues. But, you know, we don't take those things personally. I've worked with former Chief Blair. You know, I consider him a friend still, as I do many others in the opposite parties, if you will. And I think that's a good thing about how we do politics in this country. We're not arch enemies. We can have very significant differences of opinion. We can express those, but still be respectful of one another. And of course, be respectful of why we're there, what we're there to do.
Well, I think that's very well said, and we're looking forward to having more up close in conversation with Minister Fantino. Welcome back. We're in conversation with Minister Fantino, and before the break we were talking a little bit about the differences between the Conservatives and the Liberals, and I'm just curious now because it seems as though you have a very good working relationship with all party members and all caucus members. What are the inside discussions like when you're sitting in the Conservative caucus?
Well, first and foremost, discussions are ongoing all the time, informal, formal. And what we try and do is we try and network and try and share opinions and try and share information, those kinds of issues. And very often try and sell a product, try and sell an idea, try and convince people. So the relationship is very cordial. It's amongst colleagues, and many of us have become good friends. So it's a very active, ongoing networking and interaction that happens all the time. Some of it in formal surroundings at caucus gatherings, meetings, committee meetings. But a lot of the work actually gets done behind the scenes. And it's unfortunate that things like question period, for instance, that is, as you know, probably the worst theater you'll ever see anywhere,
yes,
gets so much attention, and you know, it really does form a very negative opinion, I believe, of what actually politicians do. That 1 hour of bad theater, unfortunately, seems to form the basis for so much of the negative opinion that people have about politicians. But that's not the reality. It really isn't. It's an important piece of our democracy. But the reality is, much of our work gets done behind the scenes, away from the television cameras, away from the media, and good things do happen, trust me.
I want to talk maybe about the exciting parts of politics. Now that you're, you know, Associate Minister of National Defense, there must be some things that really thrill you. What are some of the things that really make you excited?
That's a very good question. The things that excite me a lot is the opportunity to learn more and more about Canada and Canadians, the opportunity to network with people, feet on the ground, directly with people, not reading reports and all of that. And my most recent, very rewarding experience, if you will, was a trip that I took to the high Arctic. Meeting with Eskimo folks up there, meeting with our rangers, who are the eyes and ears of our defense system in the north, and just having that experience. I mean, you know, we're down here in the Greater Toronto area, in Ottawa, whatever, in Vancouver. We're very comfortable with the way things are here, right?
That's
like
true.
we seem to have everything at our fingertips, but we forget that other Canadians are having to deal with nature's worst it can offer, for instance,
yes,
in some cases. And they cope and they deal with things, and they're no less Canadian and no less important to our country than what we are. So those experiences I find very gratifying, because the more time you spend meeting people and traveling this country, the more you begin, or you should, appreciate just how lucky we are, the quality of life that we enjoy here, how we all come from somewhere else, how we can live in relative peace and mutual respect, you know. So that to me is, and of course right at home, in my own riding with seniors, seniors organizations, and the kinds of things that they can relate to you about their experience in life and what it's meant to them to come to Canada, leaving family and friends behind and coming here to work, and how they have embraced Canadian society and how they are very much part of our fabric, and I believe it's the foundation of a great country.
Speaking about the fabric of this country, let's touch on diversity. You have a very diverse riding. It used to be predominantly Italian, but now we see a lot of diversity there. What are some of the things that you've noticed in terms of the changes in your area?
I've noticed that the various ethnic organizations that have sprung up, for instance,
yes,
how they can celebrate their diversity, their culture, their heritage, their traditions, in a way that they also celebrate Canada.
Yeah.
For instance, this morning we had a meeting with the Amadian community, which is quite substantial in our area, and we were talking about different things, and one of their big plans coming up is celebrations of Canada Day. You know, so how they have embraced, that's just an example of many, how they have embraced Canadian society, you know, how we can still, and they can still celebrate their culture, their heritage, their traditions, but be fiercely Canadian at the same time. It's a great experiment. I mean, this is probably one of the best experiments of respect for human rights, the dignity of the person, be welcoming and accepting, and be respectful. And I think to me, that's been a rewarding experience. And
you're also probably seeing a lot of diversity entering into the national force as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's no way that we can pretend that we are not a microcosm of the world. I mean, we are who we are, people that have come here from every corner of the world. We speak all different languages. We have all of these different culture, but there's also organizations that work very hard to promote their own inclusion in Canadian society, but at the very same time get into mainstream of Canadian society in the professions. Law enforcement certainly is one of them, and politics. I mean, we now see, I think, are we done? We're not done. We have quite a ways to go yet. But you know, in my time, when I'm an Italian immigrant, but when I first wanted to join the Toronto Police Service, who was basically white Anglo-Saxon and all of that, it was very difficult. I mean, I wasn't readily accepted. I had to wait my turn, if you will, and apply 3 times, and eventually I got in. But those days are gone. We need more women into policing, certainly. We need more women in politics. We need more women to get out front and provide the kind of leadership that the women are very capable of providing. I get lectured by my wife all the time, because when I drive and she sees me make a maneuver that's probably a little bit aggressive, she would say, "Women don't drive like that." So,
she's right.
She is, absolutely. Absolutely. So,
talking a little bit more about this diversity, one of the big heroes and champions of diversity is, of course, your super colleague, Jason Kenney. Minister Kenney is now working with you on national defense files. So how has that experience been for you?
Well, I've known Jason Kenney for a while, so for me it's just lining up to be mutually supportive in order to focus and deal with some very critical issues. We've been able to divide our portfolios in a way that we are mutually helpful, but not duplicating or doing our work in a way that we interfere with one another, but we're working very closely together. So he's an enjoyable experience, really. He's very dynamic, yeah. And as you know, very, very busy. He has a great capacity for work, and I think he's a great ambassador for Canada, what we represent, who we are, and he's loved by everybody. I mean, yeah, and that's a credit to him, but I think it's also a credit to Canada that we can have a politician who is able to network across all cultures and all traditions, all religions, in a way that he does, and so ably represent what we do and who we are in our government, of course.
Now, when we come back from this break, we're going to speak to Mr. Fantino on what kind of legacy he'd like to leave behind right after this. Welcome back. We're in conversation with Julian Fantino. Minister Fantino, if you had to leave behind one thing for your grandchildren in terms of a legacy, what's that one thing? What would that one thing be?
Oh, I would want them to be very proud of their grandfather, for instance, and certainly speaking of my grandkids, of course. But my children, I don't think I have to do any more to convince them that I've been an honorable person, tried to do a good job, not a perfect job, because perfection is not of this world, but decent, hardworking, committed, loyal, dedicated, fiercely Canadian, and not afraid to stand up and take positions, speak on issues, and I think at the end of the day, really, we all have a responsibility to not only leave a legacy, but also to keep on contributing. So it's not over until it's over. And my sense is that we have to continue working hard. I'm certainly committed to doing that. And when people reflect back on my time on this earth, what I've done, I'm even amazed at what I've done from the point of view of 40 years in law enforcement, and then transition into political life, always about public service, always about helping others, always about doing the greater good kind of thing, very often a detriment to family activities, family commitments. So I like to believe that my legacy will be one of just doing the right thing for the right reasons, even when no one is watching.
I'm sure, as you mentioned, you never anticipated being in the shoes that you are in,
no.
and living such a full, complete life of varied experiences. If somebody on the outside was watching you and was looking for some advice on how they could also climb this difficult ladder or break glass ceilings the way you have, what kind of advice could you give or offer to them?
That's a very good question. And I think it starts from when you're young, when you have the whole future ahead of you. It's really important to make good decisions very early on in life, where mistakes can get you into a lot of long-term difficulties later. So I think it's really important to have that kind of sense of everything you do today as a young person is an investment in your future. And of course, along with that goes, lead a clean, law-abiding, decent life, be respectful, volunteer, certainly listen to your parents. I talk to people all the time about that, young people. But I think as you move forward, you can't be deterred by frustrations and whatever. You have to persevere. My view has always been that if I can't get access to something that I feel is the right thing to do through the front door, then I will go to the back door. You know what I mean? You have to persevere, and you don't always get your way, and nor should you. And you have to work hard. I think the work ethic is probably one of the things that has helped me greatly in terms of being able to demonstrate that I will not be frustrated. I will keep on working hard. I will convince even those who are naysayers and those who may not be your supporters or my supporters, I will convince them that they're wrong. Why? Because I'm going to show them. And so for me, that's so important that we shouldn't give up. We have to persevere. We have to keep on taking the knocks, if you will, and accepting those not as a condition of life, but as a condition of the way things are. We don't always get our way.
That's right.
So I think that to me is really important. The work ethic, values, being able to fit into a society that requires of all of us that we make an extra effort. And to me as well, never forget those in greater need. There's a thing about some people who come out of difficult upbringings, if you will, difficult circumstances. They finally make it. And when they move on, they look at everyone else in the rearview mirror, you know, like I'm out of here. Well, you know what? That's not always a good thing. Like we should be also mindful that we have an obligation towards others. You know, there's those in greater need. Find ways to put back. If we're lucky enough to have a good job, good future, stability in our home front, if we're able to succeed, however we measure success, I think it's a duty and an obligation that we also help those in greater need that may not be as fortunate.
Were you always this wise, or did you learn this from working with seniors?
Well, you know what? That's a great point that you make, because working with seniors is not just an opportunity to help those who have sort of brought us to this dance, right? I mean,
yes.
they made huge sacrifices,
yes.
But it keeps you humble,
yes.
and it sort of instills a little bit of humanity that you may have forgot about or discounted, about the fact that you know, this great quality of life that we enjoy did not come by cheap. Freedom is not free.
Yes.
You know, Canada has and continues to participate in serious conflicts where we are championing and working with allies to not only deal with the threat of terrorism as we are, but also to make sure that the things that we value, the things that our veterans have fought for, so many have died, are not forgotten. And so, you know, there's some intrinsic values that we can't ever forget or take for granted. And we have to also remember who, in fact, has enabled us to enjoy what we today probably can say without any reservation whatsoever. This is the greatest experience of a country that's got its act together.
Your children and grandchildren are so lucky to have you, because we could probably sit and listen to you all day speak about your true passion for this country. It's really overwhelming.
Well, you know, my children are growing up now. Obviously, we have 4 grandchildren, but it's my grandchildren that sort of have become my beacon, because when I think about things, or when I'm called upon to make a decision, I very often reflect about their future when, you know, I won't be here. I won't have an opportunity to help them or to share their growth in a wonderful society. So it helps you really stay balanced, because the things you do, the decisions you make, they're not impersonal. They relate right back to the very people that you care deeply about, which is all Canadians, Canada, but more particularly your own grandchildren, you know, their future and their hopes and aspirations. So I think that's what we owe our children and generations to come. And I think that's why some of us have matured in public service, where you go from law enforcement and policing and put your toe in this ambience of political endeavors.
Yes. Now, on a final note, you are seeking re-election on October 19th. Will your family be helping you, and what is the name of the new riding?
Well, we're Woodbridge-Vaughan, so we're a smaller riding, which in itself is a big help, because the riding as it stands now is very active. Many seniors clubs, organizations, many activities. It's a constant ebb and flow of things that are happening, and of course you want to be part of that. You want to participate. And so there's that. And anyway, the future for me will be more the same. I mean, you know, things don't change, other than probably we'll be having a less of a demand on my time and the kinds of things that we need to do. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Okay, well, we're looking to seeing the election and learning more from you. Maybe you'll come back to visit us on Insider's View. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
I wish we had more time. Minister Fantino, you're a fabulous man, and it's really nice to see a humble politician like you.
You're very kind. Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Insider's View. I'm Melissa Handrahan.